coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches. I am your host, guys, as always, Coach Steve. We are back for another fantastic episode tonight. We are into the heart of week 2 of fantasy football. It's going way too fast for me, but we are here for it today. Coach Tyler, brother, what is going on?
What's up, guys? Yeah, it's crazy that it's week 2. You know, we waited so long for week 1, and it just went by in a flash. So let's jump into week 2 and get ready.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of big news, I think we covered everything on Monday's episode. Thankfully, we covered some injuries. Obviously, Brock Purdy's officially going to be out. Looks like at least 2 to 5 weeks. But we've kind of already mentioned the kind of breakdown when it comes to the 49ers. So if you didn't see that part of our episode, go back to Monday's episode and check that out. But he's looked like he's going to be out. Looks like Mac Jones is going to be starting in week 2 and maybe for the foreseeable future. It's very fortunate for all these guys to get paid and then, oh man, I'm hurt now. So that's the life of the NFL players, it seems like. But we have a lot to cover today, guys. So if you're returning or if you're new to our show, you know, we're doing things a little different this year than we've done in years past. This year we are doing top 10 favorable and unfavorable matchups for each position. We'll talk about, and you'll see if you're live on our YouTube channel, a really strong and solid slideshow there, kind of breaking down each individual player based on the matchups and everything like that. So we're not going to waste your time. We're going to get right into it so you have plenty of time to go watch Thursday Night Football, or if you're listening to this over the weekend before Sunday's game. So let's jump into the action here. So as we always do, we start off at quarterback here. Let me actually switch the screen a little bit here. There we go. That's too big. Hold on. No, that's not right either. One of these are not right. Hold on. Oh, no. Oh, great. Not going well tonight, guys. Oh, here we go. This is the one I want at least. All right, cool. Perfect. All right. So after that, Miss Ham. So we are back now. Like I said, we're starting with the quarterbacks, and we're going to start with the, obviously, always going on a positive note here. And this is the top 5 best quarterback matchups, and this is based off of 2025 fantasy points per game allowed. Now, they're going to fluctuate early on in the season because, obviously, some teams just let up a crazy amount of points, and it's going to eventually correct itself as we get into the season. The stats will get a little bit more predictable to some extent. So the top 5 quarterbacks this week, you have Joe Flacco, Sam Darnold, Drake May, Justin Fields, and Jalen Hurts. Anyone you want to mention in particular here, Coach Tyler?
Yeah, really, I do kind of look at Joe Flacco, and as much as it is he's going against the Ravens, I do like the matchup. Obviously, their defense is just a hair better than the Bengals defense. But this is exactly what we thought the Browns were going to be, right? They're going to be in a position that they need to throw the ball. Flacco threw it 45 times last week. That's exactly what we expect, right? And so, you know, obviously we want to see the touchdown numbers go up. We want to see a little bit more efficiency that way. But if you're telling me that you've got a guy that's going to throw the ball 45 times a game, even against a tough defense, it's hard to hate the volume there, right? We look at these running backs on terrible teams and we say, oh, but they're getting 20 touches, 25 touches a game, and volume is king, right? I promise you there's very few people over the span of however long Joe Flacco is going to be the starter that are going to be close to him in terms of pass attempts on average, right? And
That's
so
true.
If you're a volume is king person, I know it's not, you know, the sexiest start. Obviously, if you have one of like the top 5 guys, you're not going to start Joe Flacco over them. But if you're streaming quarterbacks, Joe Flacco gives you literally the most opportunities to get fantasy points because he's going to throw the ball more than any other quarterback in the league.
That is true there. And then I've listened to other podcasts and they've said, oh, the 45 attempts per game. And like, he can absolutely do that on a week-to-week basis. And he may need to against the Ravens this week.
He's
here.
done it on a week-to-week basis. That's the thing. That's why we love him as the, you know, backup quarterback coming in randomly.
Yes, we do, because he can really change a fantasy day for any offense there. So that again, there's a reason why he's number one. There's a reason why Coach Tyler picked him out of this bunch here. Most of the other guys like Drake May, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, for me, they're all starts this week here. Their matchups are good. They're for the most part trusted quarterbacks. Hoping Drake May can show us. I hope he doesn't show us this week as a Dolphins fan, but as a fantasy analyst, I hope he shows it a little bit more this week. I still want to see it from Sam Donald before I trust him even in a favorable matchup right now. So, all right. Going over to the 6 to 10. These are also within the top 10 best matchups. You have Geno Smith, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, Michael Penix Jr., and CJ Stroud. Coach Tyler, anyone you want to particularly name here?
Yeah. It's hard for me to see Stroud as a fade, especially thinking back to his rookie season, what he did against the Bucks.
I understand.
But I look at Geno Smith and I'm really kind of blown away. He goes up against the Chargers offense that kind of held Patrick Mahomes in check a little bit, but Geno was airing it out. And that's not what anyone, especially myself, expected to see going into week one, right? All the buzz was, Ashton Genty's going to touch the ball so much as a rookie. And then Geno Smith went out and had 34 pass attempts. And turned that against, it's not an outstanding defense, but New England's usually known for their defense.
Yeah.
Turned 34 pass attempts into 24 completions and 362 passing yards and a touchdown. Like, this is another one. Volume might be king here. And so if Geno Smith, especially in a game where they're probably playing from behind, they're 3.5-point dogs, they're going to want to try and establish the run, but Geno's going to have to throw the ball at some point to keep him in this game. And I think that if he can show what he did last week, he can be one of those consistent streaming options for you if he's throwing for 300-plus yards a week.
Hey, Darren, only need one, and maybe we'll catch a trend. So
takes one person to change the world.
Exactly here. So, yeah. No, I mean, I understand completely. Geno Smith makes a ton of sense as a favorable matchup. Again, if you're streaming quarterbacks, again, a lot of these guys are streaming unless you're like in a 14-man or deeper. But Geno's a great streamer this week there. I think that matchup against the Chargers on Monday Night Football is going to be fun to watch. I think that's going to be a higher scoring game there. And it already showed us that, again, it could be part of the Patriots defense, but the Raiders run offense is not that good right now. Yeah, Genty is hopefully going to change that sooner than later, but they did not block very well. Genty didn't really have much space, so it kind of forced Geno Smith to throw the ball, and it worked for this offense here. The rest of the guys on this list, obviously you shot Josh Allen. There's no other question about that there. Russell Wilson didn't really show me enough. Again, he could probably maybe surprise, but I'm still not trusting him in fantasy right now to be a trusted starter until he can kind of show us that he still has something this season to give us. Michael Penix Jr., again, I'm just a little higher on him this week there, but I do like his matchup this coming week here against the Vikings. I'm sorry there. If Caleb Williams just kept himself in check on Monday Night Football, he may have actually had a pretty good fantasy day already, but he probably could have had a better day. And as long as Drake London is on the field, Michael Penix should be pretty well. CJ Stroud, I'm torn on it because I want him to do good for you, Coach Tyler. Obviously, I want him to do good for fantasy. I do have him in a couple places there, but I'm still waiting to see this offense do something. And they really didn't show me against the Rams. I know the Rams defense is pretty solid, but they didn't show me enough to trust that this offense is going to be fantasy relevant consistently yet. Again, hopefully that can change this week. But again, I'm fading that those numbers aren't going to be higher than what we saw last week or anything like that. So, all right, Darren's got a question in the chat. Love that, Darren. All right, do you guys like this week to start JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix? I don't particularly like either option, but that's what I get for drafting Chase 1 overall. Actually, I think this is probably going to be one of those bigger ones. Hey, Albert's in the chat too. Hey, Albert, how are you? But back to Darren's question, Coach Tyler. Who are you starting this week? JJ versus the Falcons or Bo Nix versus the Colts?
I'm going to be honest. I saw enough from JJ McCarthy on Monday night to trust him this week. I'm going to put this on tape. I'm really considering playing him over Patrick Mahomes this week against the Eagles.
I don't think that's crazy at all.
Yeah. I look at the matchup against the Falcons, we just saw, obviously the Falcons and Tampa Bay games usually go kind of wild, but I saw a defense that is exploitable. And what I really saw from JJ McCarthy was him begin to settle in as a, week one really rookie, right? It's not his rookie season, but he hasn't played a down of, meaningful football in almost 2 years.
It's a national championship game.
Yeah. He played a few preseason drives and then had the knee injury, everything. But he hasn't played a game that means anything. I think it was 21 months before Monday.
God.
And so, yeah, it took him a second to get going, but O'Connell trusted him, did what he's supposed to do, and McCarthy went out there, and I think he's the first ever quarterback to account for 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter of their rookie debut or their NFL debut, which is one of those, kind of fenced-in stats, but still, to know he's going to go out in the third or the fourth quarter and score 3 touchdowns, you trust that. You love that. And especially, doing it in the position that he did. The Bears defense isn't a slouchy defense, right? He needed to go out there and win this game and put the team on his back, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
That's very easily done against the Falcons, I would say. So I think it's, potential to look almost exactly like the game from last week. I think that JJ's the guy to start, especially against this defense.
No, absolutely. I like JJ a lot there. He was someone who just very accurate with the ball. I mean, if you watch the game, there were definitely a couple throws where like, oh man, got batted down. Oh man, someone tapped it. You take those away, and his adjusted completion percentage was really good this past weekend, which part of the reason why he was good for fantasy for us, obviously, at the end of the day, is that very accurate quarterback there. He's got the weapons around them. Obviously, you're going to expect hopefully a little bit better of an outing. First game, jitters, all that fun stuff there. But JJ McCarthy's someone I think I'd prefer to start over Bo Nix. I mean, I don't hate Bo Nix either, though, because I don't know if the Colts defense is legit or not. This will be a good game to tell that because I don't trust what they did against the Dolphins per se last week. Miami was just I don't even want to talk about it. But I still want to see that Colts defense and how good they really are or not. And I think that Denver's offense will show that. But to trust the confidence in, I would say, skill players and coaching staff, give me JJ McCarthy this week. All right, let's move over to some running backs. No, bad quarterback matchups here. Okay, that makes a lot of sense here. So, bad quarterback matchups. I forgot about them. All right, these are the bottom 10 matchups, or bottom 5 matchups, the 5 worst matchups for fantasy this week. Daniel Jones, Spencer Rattler, Matthew Stafford, Bo Nix, and Patrick Mahomes there. Obviously, I'm just going to quickly, like I mentioned Bo Nix already. I still have him as a start because, again, I'm a little questionable on that Colts defense overall there. So, but Coach Tyler, outside of Bo Nix, is there someone there that you want to mention?
Kind of like I said, Patrick Mahomes. I just feel a certain way. Obviously, the Chargers defense isn't bad. The Eagles defense is just better. They didn't really look it against the Cowboys, but they're better, at least on paper. And we know going into this game, Mahomes is going in without a number one that he was supposed to have in Xavier Worthy, right? And so he's got Travis Kelce, who minus a broken coverage play would have had 1 reception for 10 yards. You've got Hollywood Brown, who had 1 million targets for maybe the first time in a decade. And then you've got a bunch of guys that are just trying to make space. And so I love Mahomes. I'm a Texas Tech guy. I love Patrick. He's a dog. He's the best quarterback in the NFL, and I'll still stand on that.
But not in week 2.
Not in week 2. There's just better options, I think, in terms of fantasy. And this Eagles game could turn into a shootout, and it could be the same thing as last time. But at the same time, I don't want to bet on the over going crazy like that.
Of course. The rest of the guys on the list, the way I see it about Daniel Jones is that I would rather be wrong and him play really well and him on my bench, knowing that, no, maybe I really do have a good quarterback, than play him and him do bad and say, shit, I bought into Daniel Jones once again. Spencer Rattler, obviously, I just don't trust him overall. And Matthew Stafford, I think the Titans' secondary is really good. Their defense is solid, and I don't think Stafford's going to end up seeing a big outing in week 2 here. overall. I mean, I think that's going to be a lot of running and a lot of throwing to Puka Nakua once again there. So I don't expect that to be a high scoring game. Going over to the other in the bottom 10 matchups this week here, you got Joe Burrow, Cam Ward, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Jaden Daniels. Oh my God, I'm losing today. Jaden Daniels. Obviously outside of Jaden Daniels because he plays tonight. Any one of these other quarterbacks you want to mention?
Yeah, I feel like let me figure out where I want to go with this.
It's tough. I get it.
It is.
It's only so many options. And Lamar is a start. You obviously start Lamar, and you
Yeah,
obviously start Joe
Lamar's
Burrow.
are
So it's really
really,
Kyler or Cam Ward, I feel like.
yeah, really, it's got to go Kyler. They're just such favorites in that game, but also the Cardinals are just, they're never a team that you can trust, right? Kind of like you said, you don't want to buy into Daniel Jones and be like, oh, he did great week one and be wrong. The Cardinals, it took Buda Baker making a, game-saving play to save them from going to overtime against the Saints, who are supposed to have the number one overall pick in next year's draft. I don't know that I buy into the hype. And, the Panthers didn't look outstanding. We have to remember they played, 2/3 of that game coming off of a weather delay. So that throws off everything for a lot of those guys.
Yes.
They weren't necessarily overly in the game, whatever the weather delay happened, but still, I just don't buy into, the Cardinals are 7.5-point favorites. I don't trust that. So I think Kyler's going to have to, compete. I think he's going to have to keep them in this game. I don't think it's going to be, a runaway like Vegas thinks it will be, which we know that Vegas knows a ton more than me. So I might just be an idiot looking back on this next week. But I think Kyler is a start. I don't trust the Cardinals offense to dominate the Panthers like they probably should. And so Kyler's going to have to step up and do something, and that usually translates to fantasy points.
That's fair. All right. Again, Cam Ward, you said Cam Ward, he's just not ready yet, but I was encouraged by his performance still, just an overall. There's some decent throws that he made. All right, over to the running back position, guys, here. And we're starting with the good matchups once again here. And these are the top 5 best matchup for running backs this past week here, this coming week. Breece Hall, Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, Javonte Williams, Kyron Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, and Kareem Hunt here. Anyone you want to mention? Who's your highlight guy here, or group, or whatever?
My highlight, you have them as risky flexes. I'm going to look for other options as opposed to the Seahawk backs. They obviously get a great matchup, but I just want to see what this backfield really is, right? For the first time possibly ever, we saw a Charbonnet-led backfield with Ken Walker in the game, which is just, almost mind-boggling to say.
Yes.
Let's see, 12 carries to Walker's 10, and then Walker had 3 targets to Charbonnet 0, which is really kind of shocking because Charbonnet's been that third down guy. But it's almost as 50-50 as you can have it for really the first time that I can remember in their careers. And so I really want to see them come out. Obviously, one of them is going to score a touchdown and have a, pretty good fantasy week. It was Charbonnet last week. Could be Ken Walker this week. Could be Charbonnet again. But I want to see if the 50-50 trend continues. Because if it does, that really, it obviously evens them out in our rankings because we don't know who the guy is going to be, right? We don't know if it's going to be the Ken Walker show. We don't know if it's going to be Zach Charbonnet just getting all the red zone touches, and so you want him because he's got the better chance to fall into the end zone. So I would look for other options for the Seattle backs. If you have Charbonnet, there's a good chance you have some running backs ahead of him. If you have Ken Walker, hopefully you have someone like a Javonte Williams or Isaiah Pacheco behind them or behind him. But I would really prefer to lean away from them until we see, more concrete evidence of what this backfield's really going to look like in terms of the touch split.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. There, I'm like I said, I have him as risky flex because I think, yeah, there's potential upside, but again, who's going to end up carrying the rock at the end of the day? There, it's hard to predict just from one game because we could next week it could be Ken Walker 20 carries. Like that's I feel like how frustrating I think this backfield could be, and even in a favorable matchup, like Coach Tyler said, I would look for other options if I could, but if you're starting them, it's risky. It's risky for sure. Um, with the rest of the players in this group here, obviously Brees Hall coming off a really strong game, continue to start him. Obviously Derrick Henry destroyed the Bills' run defense. You got to go with that. Javonte Williams, not very efficient, but Giants' run defense was a little skeptical last week there. So I'm kind of okay going back to Javonte Williams, despite it just being 2 rushing touchdowns. Carry Williams, you're starting him, of course, and kind of similar to the Seattle backfield, Pacheco and Alvin Kamara, Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. I just don't want to trust whatever comes out of that backfield right now until one of them separates from the pack there because it is not pretty. It's a split backfield. It was completely split down the middle basically for everything, which you do not want in fantasy. So, all right, over the rest of the top 10 for running backs with good matchups: Jalen Warren, Nick Chubb, Jameer Gibbs, Dave Montgomery, James Conner, Trey Benson, Dylan Sampson, Quinshon Junkins maybe plays this week. I probably wouldn't play Junkins if he even plays this week.
Yeah.
I'm not going to even throw Jerome Ford's name in there, but you can throw Jerome Ford's name in there. But Coach Tyler, anything you want to mention of one of these guys here?
Yeah. Trust Detroit. I think that a lot of people, there's just a lot of talk from the media and everyone saying, Ben Johnson's gone. Oh my gosh, the world's going to end. World's not going to end. We're going to be fine. And, the Lions, they had this outstanding offense last year. Everyone was sustainable for fantasy. It was perfect. And then the Lions went out against a, good Packers defense in week 1 and didn't look amazing. But they went into the game as the underdogs, which is, you don't want to think of the Lions going back to being the underdog under Dan Campbell, right?
No.
Well, funny enough, they play Ben Johnson this week. So they're going to have to switch things up. But Detroit comes in as a 6.5-point favorite in that game. Especially if Caleb Williams looks anything like he did on Monday night after that first drive. There's a good chance that we get the old Detroit ground and pound offense back because why not, right? You look at what the Vikings did against the Bears. Jordan Mason had a, fairly consistent day, 15 carries for 68. Aaron Jones got a little bit in there. Aaron Jones was getting his receptions, had that long touchdown reception on that wheel route. There's enough to be fed here, and I think that a lot of people are freaking out and jumping to conclusions about the Lions after week 1 against a game that they weren't even supposed to win according to the books. This is a game they're supposed to win. So if they look atrocious this week against another good defense, we'll see. But, I'm going to say trust the Lions' backs. I'm going to say trust the Lions' offense. Don't be scared off because of week 1.
I agree with you on that there. Right. Looking at the rest of the running backs in this grouping here, I'm going back to Jalen Warren. I know week 1 wasn't as amazing as I think I wanted it to be for him and the role that he had, obviously with Kenny Gainwell getting a lot of opportunity, but it's a good matchup. I'm going back to Jalen Warren as a good flex. I'd love to start Nick Chubb. I really would. I guess I can think he's still on the Browns because I put his icon next to the Browns still, but he's a Houston Texan now, but I just feel like it's just going to be so inefficient. Like it's going to be another 15 carries for 60 yards again. Like it's tough. He's going to need a touchdown to make his day worthy enough, and I'm just not buying it for this offense. Unfortunately, Coach Tyler, I'm just not buying the Houston's offense until they show me something. James Conner, Trey Benson. I love
Nico. I'm going to tell you.
I mean, I think I have Nico in here. I think he's a starter. James Conner. He's a start, obviously. Trey Benson's a good sleeper if you want to take that shot early on in the season. And Dylan Sampson, again, I have him as another potential sleeper this week here. I think the matchup is good enough that Joe Flacco's going to throw the ball a ton, and the Joe Flacco effect, he's going to get targets in the backfield. So, all right, let's get over the bad matchups. Bottom 5 matchups this week here. You got Josh Jacobs, Ashton Denty, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and Tony Pollard. Now, Coach Tyler, who do you want to highlight in this grouping?
I'm going to highlight Jonathan Taylor. I I definitely see him as a fade this week. Partially on matchup, just because it's a tough Broncos defense, but partially because of last week. Right, I was watching Red Zone and I see Jonathan Taylor, having a fairly good week against the Miami Dolphins, and then he just kind of disappears out of nowhere, and he's sitting on the sideline, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're up by enough. He just doesn't need, they don't need him in. They don't want him to get hurt, whatever. Turns out he was hurt, had a neck injury. And according to Steichen, he was able to go back in. He would have been good to go back in, but at that point, they didn't necessarily need him to go back in. But neck injuries are very wishy-washy, especially for a running back who's going to get hit as much as he does. I'm going to want to see him, come out and look good and look healthy, because you don't want a stinger. You don't want one big hit and then you lose Jonathan Taylor after the first quarter.
I agree.
It's hard to start anyone over him because of how high you drafted him probably, but hopefully something turned out for you in week 1. But he's a guy that I'm not going to only fade because of the matchup, but I'm also fading because of the potential for re-injury.
I very much agree with you. That's why I have him as a fade, because the injury concerns me, and this is a tough defense, and I just don't think the Colts end up seeing the type of workload that he saw this past week, where he had, I think, at least 17 carries. So I don't think he gets the 17 carries this week. The rest of the guys, I'm going back to Josh Jacobs. I just feel like the Giants' offense was just that bad, and the Commanders just didn't allow much on the ground for them. I think Josh Jacobs should be fine. Genty scares me again. Again, it wasn't a pretty efficient day, and we saw the Chargers really just shut down the Chiefs' backfield last week. And again, Genty, I think, will need another touchdown to salvage his day. You obviously start Saquon Barkley. I don't care. Again, I must also thought Saquon Barkley was still a Giant for some fucking reason. Pardon my language. And I like Tony Pollard still. I think last week was a really tough matchup. And I think that they're going to go back to him again with the opportunity. And again, I don't think that the Titans-Rams game is going to be a very high-scoring game, which allows Tony Pollard to stay more involved, where I think that where I could see the Colts and the Broncos game kind of getting a little one-sided earlier. That's kind of how I see it. That backfield's shaken out this week here. So the rest of the bottom 10 matchups, you have Bijan Robinson, Mario Hampton, Austin Eckler, and Bill. Devon Achane, and Derrick Henry here. Obviously, outside of the Commanders, but guys, is there someone you want to mention and highlight here, Coach Tyler?
Yeah. I feel like it's got to be, obviously a lot of these guys are starts. I'm timid on Devon Achane. I finally get to throw it back at you after all your Texans hate today. But, just the offense didn't look good. And a big proponent of that was Devon Achane didn't look really all that good, right? Ended up falling into the end zone to save his week in fantasy, but, only had 7 carries. They were playing from behind a ton during the game. But Devon Achane's biggest, help for you in fantasy is his receiving volume, right? He's an efficient runner, but you aren't getting, Derrick Henry running games out of him, right? You're getting all these little dump off targets that's going to boost him in your PPR leagues. And he only had 3 receptions in a game where, the offense had to throw the ball, right? They only somehow ended up with 31 pass attempts total. But I just need to see Devon Achane actually, have that reception total, have that, spark that we want to see from him. Because if he doesn't end up on the end zone in that reception, we're having a little bit more of a different conversation about him. And so I want to see a little bit more of the receiving volume from him, or a little more work on the ground, whichever equates to more touches for him and more ability to be as explosive as he needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you on that there, but I'm still starting him personally. I think that last week showed us anything that no matter what, Devon Achane's going to get his in that offense. The rest of the guys, like Bijan, I'm starting. Derrick Henry, I'm starting. Obviously, Mario Hampton, I'm okay going back to him because the volume is there, and I don't know if the Raiders' run defense is that good. I just feel like things kind of got out of hand there, and they kind of abandoned the run for the Patriots this past week here, and things just didn't go according to plan there. So I'm still going to go with Amari Hampton. I don't find him as much of a fade as I did last week. So, all right, going over to our next position here, we are on to wide receivers now, guys. We're halfway through, almost done. These are the top 5 best wide receiver matchups for week 2. Starting off here, we have the A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, Garrett Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen. So, who do you want to start here? Oh, who do you want to highlight here? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to the Eagles there. Obviously, both of these guys are pretty much starters for you, but this is another one that I'm just going to say trust it. Week 1s are bad, right? Everything that all of our rankings, everything that we set forth before the season is all prediction, right? It's all what we think is going to happen. We don't have any concrete evidence. But we also don't, necessarily have concrete evidence against it after 1 week, right? Especially for an offense as high-powered as the Eagles. So, this is a game that I see them having to pass the ball a decent bit. The Chiefs are still going to shut it down a little bit up front. And so I think they're going to have to throw the ball. I think A.J. Brown's going to get right with Hurts. He does a lot after these, 1-2 target games. And then Devonta Smith, they've got to throw it to more than just A.J. Brown somehow. So they've got to spread it out. And I think the Eagles are going to have to actually throw to stay in this game.
That's fair. We have a question from the chat. Hey, coaches, is Debo a safe start today?
I'm a little timid with Washington. I will say I'm starting Debo in a singular league, but that's also a league where I get return yards, and so I am going to use that cheat code as much as I can. But I'm a little timid with what Washington's going to do. I think that the Packers defense did look really good last week, and I think that Micah Parsons is just going to be out there solely to chase Jaden Daniels around. So we'll see. It's going to have to come more from his receiving than any of the rushing gadget use that they would use him for, because they're going to have to just throw the ball a whole lot more in this game. So I'm timid on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat. I don't feel great. I don't feel like I'm set with Debo in my lineup. I don't feel like I'm going to get a solid 12 to 15 points. I feel like I could end up with 7 points from him. I think he kind of offers more of a boom or bust approach this week than a safe play because of the difficulty of this matchup. It's a little bit more difficult. I kind of like Terry McLaurin a little bit more than Debo Samuels this week, just because I think McLaurin kind of gets back on track after him only having 3 or 4 targets last week, and Debo had 7. So I don't think he's preferably a safe play this week. All right. So just rating off the rest of the guys here. Garrett Wilson, obviously the only worthy starter in the Jets offense, essentially in the passing game. He's got to be in the starting lineups. He's got too many targets just going to his way. Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, I think you can find them in your lineups in some way or somehow because, again, the Joe Flacco fleck. And we saw the Ravens secondary just get destroyed this past week here by the guys in the Bills, like Shakir and Coleman. Shakir for me would be a more safe option over Debo. If I had those two, I would want Shakir starting this week. Shakir I feel pretty happy about. Keon Coleman, I might fade him a little bit this week. I'm not ready to just buy in that his 11 targets in week 1 is going to be a staple for him moving forward. Could it be? Sure. But he also gets a little bit of a tougher matchup now with the Sauce Gardner out on the outside. And again, DK Metcalf, did he do all that great? Not really. He had that one crazy catch that I think helped boost the stats a little bit in that game in week 1. So I think still Keon Coleman is a little bit more I'll wait to see till week 3 kind of thing. Justin Jefferson, you obviously start him. I'm pretty happy with that. Adam Thielen, I don't really want to start him. I don't feel like it's a safe play. And nothing showed me on week 1 that he's going to see 7 or 8 targets in week 2 now. So... All right, moving over to the rest of the top 10 best wide receiver matchups. You have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Quentin Johnston, Mike Evans, Emeka Abuka, Demario Douglas, Stephon Diggs, Keyshawn Boutte. So, Coach Chow, who do you want to highlight in this grouping of wide receivers in the top 10 with good matchups?
Yeah, I'm going to look to the Cowboys here. Obviously, like we just talked about, the Giants really didn't look all that good. They didn't look all that good offensively, and they definitely didn't look that good defensively. So this is one of those games, you would think that the Cowboys would get to coast a little bit because it's the Giants, but as we know, there's three teams really competing for the NFC East. And so the Cowboys are going to need all the wins and all the points they can have as tiebreakers. So I think that they're not against running the score up a little bit. And so with that in mind, that is going to play a lot more into CD and George Pickens. Obviously, Pickens didn't get a ton of work. He's sitting as the 2. And so you can't expect him to get wide receiver 1 targets and receptions. But I think that Lamb is definitely still going to get his. He usually has great days against the Giants. And then I think Pickens is still going to pop up with a couple big plays. If one of those ends up in the end zone, that sleeper is a very happy sleeper to have.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I'm buying back into the Cowboy. I mean, I was already buying in the CD, but I'm buying back into both him and Pickens for week 2. Tyreek Hill, I have him as a sleeper. I still think he's going to be the number 1 target getter on this team here, and as long as he's playing on the field, I'll give him another chance. Jalen Waddle, he hasn't shown me in a while. For me, I have to wait. I got to see it go back on the field again before I start him in my lineup. And going over the Chargers, Ladd McConkey's a good play. I'm going to fade that this offense throws the ball a billion times again, and they have this amazingly high-power passing offense when they are a team that wants to run the ball. So I'm kind of fading both Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. Like, I don't think both players are going to have a great week here. I think Quentin Johnston could have potentially the slightly better week, and Keenan Allen kind of fades a little bit this week's here. And then Mike Evans, Emeka Abuka. I love the I love them. I like the matchup for them, and I think they should be fine this week here. They were both basically the top 2 target leaders on their team. The Patriots, DeMar Douglas had 7 targets. That's great, but negative yards on the day there. It's hard to trust that as for fantasy. Diggs, I don't think he's going to be all that great for us. The only one I really are interested in, Keyshawn Boutte. We saw this past week Michael Pittman, outside wide receiver, kind of just destroyed the Dolphins secondary, and Boutte led the team in targets. I'm generally interested to see if the talent can start coming out for a guy like him. So, all right, over to the bottom 5 worst matchup for wide receivers this week. Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Malik Neighbors, Wanda Robinson, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Cortland Sutton. So, Coach, who do you want to highlight here?
Yeah, I feel a way about Zay Flowers in the way that I do not like him. And so, I am not necessarily going to put him in the start category. He's been known to be a big boomer bust player. Obviously, finally had one of those big boom games, and it came against the Buffalo Bills, who obviously the Ravens kind of fell apart at the end, but they needed to get up and get up quick. And so I don't think that's going to be the case against the Browns. And I think the Browns are going to, I don't want to say allow the run game, but it's not going to be as pass heavy as it needed to be against the Bills. And so I see 9 targets not being the number. I see 20 yards of reception not being the number. Maybe the touchdown stays. But I don't know. Kind of like you said with Daniel Jones, I've seen a lot of Zay Flowers boom weeks, and people are really excited to start him, and then he gets 1 reception for 9 yards the next week. And so between bad matchup and bad consistency as a player, I'm going to hold him out of the stardom category until I see a few more weeks of consistent actual production.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that. I still start him just because he did enough for me to trust him. So, looking at the other players here, Michael Pittman Jr. I have him as a fade this week here. He's gonna be covered by Patrick Surtain a lot. And again, I'm kind of just down on the Colts defense. I'm hoping to prove me wrong, but I'm down on both. I think I'd probably be more favored for Josh Downs this week, just strictly because of Michael Pittman's likely tough matchup. Malik Neighbors, you're going to start him no matter what. The target share is just there for him. I'm probably less than enthused to go after a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, you start both of them. Sleeper is just like, more of a flex option, if anything, for T. Higgins, but both of them you have to start, even in a matchup that's considered difficult. But again, the Jaguars did play the Panthers in week 1. And against Cortland Sutton, I don't believe the Colts defense is all that great, as much as they showed us in week 1. Cortland Sutton showed us that even in a tough matchup, he will put up fantasy points for us. And so I'm going to continue to rock that he just gets peppered with targets from Bo Nix. All right. The rest of the bottom 10 matchups for wide receivers, you have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden tonight, Calvin Ridley, Tedero McMillan, and Xavier Legette. So obviously outside of the Packers, Coach Tyler, anyone you want to mention here?
Yeah, I'm really going to just stay away from the Saints altogether. I know you have them both as sits. I very much, sound off on that. Not only because they're on the Saints, but because this 49ers defense, they know that they're going to have to play to win games now, that they're starting Mac Jones and Jake Tonges as their quarterback and tight end. I think that San Francisco is just going to run the clock. I think it's going to be, give Christian McCaffrey the ball, control the clock, score a few touchdowns, get out of there safe and sound. Because whatever their trainers are doing, I don't know if I know anyone worse at their job than the 49ers strength and conditioning staff, because it's been like a decade of this now. But the Saints, they're going to have to throw the ball to stay in the game. I think the 49ers defense is good enough to obviously slow that down. But at the same time, I think the Saints are going to be playing on the 49ers time and exactly how they want to play it. And so I don't see it being a very fruitful game for either of these receivers. So I very much, am in agreement, sound off with the sit-em decision. One, because they're receivers for the Saints, and two, because I think this matchup, both offensively and defensively, is going to just be played at the pace that the 49ers want to take it.
That's fair. The rest of the grouping here, DK Metcalf coming back to Seattle, revenge game. You can't make this up. He's going to probably see plenty of targets. I'm good enough with those target share to start him this week. Calvin Austin, show it to me again before I trust you in my lineup. Calvin Ridley, again, him and like Tedero McMillan, for me, it's volume plays. Like I'm going to start them. They're going to see 7+ targets in this game, and at least they'll catch half of them, and hopefully they are productive with those catches. Xavier Legette, yeah, I'm not trusting him. He's going to be one of those few busts coming into the league, so fortunately, that's what it is. So, all right, let's get over tight ends. Let's come back on the positive notes here. The top 5 tight end matchups for week 2. Pat Fitzpatrick. Pat Freiermuth, thank God. Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, David Njoku and Harold Fanning, Tanner Connor, if Darren Waller does not look likely to play again, Trey McBride, and Brock Bowers here. Again, Coach Tyler, this is kind of an obvious one. You obviously are not touching the Dolphins tight ends, and you're starting McBride and you're starting Bowers. So likely it comes down to who do you want to highlight, the Steelers or the Browns?
I'll go with the Browns because this is just another see it for me. I know you have stardom at both of them, but I want to see it, right? This is against, like we said, Bengals defense, buns. So going against an actual good, their matchup rank against tight ends, not great. But defense as a whole, pretty good. Even in a game where they're going to need to throw it, right? I want to see, Harold Fannin led the team with 9 targets. David Njoku only had 6. He went 3 for 37. I want to see which one's the guy to take out of this, or if this is just going to be a situation where you're flipping a coin each week, and one week it's going to be Fannin, one week it's going to be Njoku. I like the sentiment of stardom. I like the matchup that they have, especially like I said, Flacco's going to throw the ball 40 plus times. There's going to be targets for everyone. I just want to see how they lay out, right? I want to see if Harold Fannin continues as the top target getting tight end. I want to see if it's, he had a big boom week 1 against the Bengals, but now it comes back down to earth and it's David Njoku's week. Like, I just want to see what this split is going to be, if there is a split, or if they're just going to run 2 tight ends and you hope you play the right one each week.
Yeah, no, I understand that there a lot there, but I just, again, for me, it's the Joe Flacco effect, and I just think that they're going to end up having to throw the ball again a ton, and I think they will both be used frequently in this matchup here, so that's why I do have them as starts. And again, the Steelers, like you mentioned, they can kind of go back and forth a little bit too. I have them as sleepers because I think the matchup is good enough to play them both. If you're looking for a tight end, if you're streaming the tight end position, I'd probably stick with Jonu over for Firemuth. But it's kind of how I feel about the tight ends. You have Trey McBride or Brock Bowers. This Trey McBride. Trey McBride was a great pick this year, and I'm so happy I have him. It's just a great pick. Right. The rest of the top 10, you have Brenton Strange, Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews, Hunter Henry, and Jake Ferguson. Coach Child, who do you want to highlight here?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brenton Strange. Big fan of getting Brenton Strange late in drafts. And we see, like we just talked about, against the Bengals defense, the Browns tight ends combined for, 15 targets? I think they had about 90 yards collectively. So there's definitely an advantage to be had at the tight end position. But you also look back at last week where the Jags had a good tight end matchup. Even in as funky a game as it was, Brenton Strange was second on the team in receptions with 4. He was, he was tied for third on the team in targets behind obviously the 2 wide receivers that they have, the first round picks. But he led the team in receptions, right? We talked about this on Monday. He had 14.8 yards per reception on 4 receptions, caught all 4 of them. If I'm getting a hair under 15 yards a reception from my tight end, and I can guarantee he's going to get 4 or 5 targets a game, that's a smash for me, right? I love that in my lineup. I have Brenton Strange starting in a lot of places where I had George Kittle starting after last week. So he's a guy that I look at. I want to trust it. Again, this is going to be another, we don't have all the answers after week 1. I want to see it happen more than once. But if anyone's in the position to do that, it's got to be Brenton Strange.
Yeah, no, I am very high on Brenton Strange this week. I think I have him as a top 7 tight end this week here. Again, I just feel like Trevor Lawrence was looking for him a lot in week 1, and then the rain delay kind of just screwed everything up. If we didn't have a rain delay, I think Brenton Strange would have done a lot better in that matchup. The rest of the grouping here, like I said, Dalton Kincaid was interesting. I was surprised how well he did, and I might be, drinking the juice on him a little bit this week there. But again, the matchup's favorable. Hopefully it's higher scoring, and he can end up actually doing well. I have him as a sleeper. I don't think he's a must-start, but there's some attractiveness to him of those who've been streaming tight ends. I'm going back to Mark Andrews against the Browns. Mark Andrews has a career 11 touchdowns in 14 games against the Browns. I'm going back to that he bounces back this week here. Hunter Henry has done decently well as a member of the Patriots versus the Dolphins. So he's another guy who, again, sleeper, streaming kind of tight end. And Jake Ferguson, I have him as a sit. I know Dak loves his tight ends, and he almost caught a touchdown in week 1, but Jake Ferguson really just doesn't have a good career against the Giants. He averages like 30 yards a game, and he only has 1 touchdown in over 5 games. So obviously there's something there where, Ferguson just isn't being able to produce against the Giants overall. So I'm just kind of out on Jake Ferguson this week as much as I want to not be. All right. We're finishing up here, guys. The bad matchups, the bottom 5 matchups this week. TJ Hawkinson, Mason Taylor, Jawan Johnson, Tucker Kraft, who plays tonight, and Sam Laporta. So, Coach, who would you like to highlight here?
I have a lot of just show me guys, and I guess Jawan Johnson is another one that falls in that category.
Smart.
He has the best opportunity that he's had, right? There's not an incumbent quarterback coming in to, go back to his favorite targets. There's not tight end competition for the first time that I can remember since he's, been with the Saints. And we saw what that did for him in week 1. But I want to see it again, right? I like that he's a sleeper and not just an automatic start. If the target volume is there, if he's taking that much of a target share of that offense, throw him in your lineup every week. Please. Like, you're not going to find too much better than that if you can. But like I said, we don't have definitive answers after week 1. We just have a little bit more clues. And so Jawan Johnson's another one of those C guys. I want to see it. I want him to go out against a good 49ers defense and show me, hey, I can be that blanket coverage guy for Spencer Rattler. I can be the guy that you go to when you need someone to come down with a big reception. I don't know if everyone saw the last play of that Saints game. He almost brought in an amazing one-handed touchdown catch as time expired in triple coverage. And if it wasn't for Budda Baker, one of the best safeties in the league, coming in and knocking that ball out, there's a good chance Jawan Johnson catches that and further increases his fantasy week for you on like a 30, 35-yard touchdown. So I want to see it. He's got the tools. He's got the know-how with the offense. He's got a great coach in Kellen Moore who's able to scheme all kinds of stuff up. And if Jawan Johnson's the guy that he wants to target, that's who's going to get the ball. That's who's going to be open. That's who's going to be in the best position to succeed. But I want to see it more than just week 1 and see more than, not see more than what I saw, but just see it more consistently.
Yeah, no, that is fair there. The rest of the guys, C.J. Hawkinson, again, I think the matchup's just tough overall. And again, I wasn't overly impressed with the direction that J.J. McCarthy was going with his tight end. I think he kind of spread the ball out a lot, which I don't think is going to be good for T.J. Hawkinson. So I'm kind of fading on T.J. this week here. Mason Taylor, I'm not trusting anyone outside of Garrett Wilson right now. And Sam Laporta, I'm starting Sam Laporta. I think the lines are going to show that they're going to come to play against Ben Johnson because they want to show that Ben Johnson wasn't their offense. It wasn't just because of Ben Johnson being there, which we all know it kind of is. But I think they're really going to show up, and I think Sam Laporta is going to continue to be a big part of that Lions offense there. So I'm still starting him this week. All right, and the rest of the bottom 10 matchups here, you have Evan Ingram, who may not even play this week, Travis Kelce, Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, Tyler Higbee, and Tyler Warren. So, Coach Tyler, who do you want to highlight here?
Yeah, I'm going to highlight Travis Kelce. I said this at the beginning of the show. If not for a broken coverage, I think I said at the beginning of the show. If not, we just talked about it, or I was just talking with someone about it. It's been one of those type of days.
Yeah.
If Travis Kelce doesn't get a broken coverage on that long touchdown, he has one reception for 10 yards. He ended the game with 4 targets in possibly the best situation that he's had. He literally took out his number 1 target competition. It still only had 4 targets. And now he's going against, like I said, a great defense in the Eagles. They might not have looked amazing against the Cowboys. They're still finding their wheels too. So I really pushed Kelce as much name value as there is, as much, oh my gosh, he's engaged and Taylor Swift and this and that. I push him to a sit, right? I see what he did last week. 35-yard touchdown. It was great. There was no one within that third of the field near him. I probably could have scored that touchdown. That's how wide open it was of a runway for him in. And so I'm going to sit him. I want to see it. It's a terrible matchup. And he didn't look outstanding in week 1. he didn't even look necessarily serviceable in week 1 outside of that one play. And again, there was no one on that side of the field with him. So if he didn't score that touchdown, we would be having a terrible conversation about Travis Kelce being old and broken. But he's going to be a sit for me. I'm not even fading him. I'm just taking him straight to the bench until he shows me that he can be even a shell of what he was. Because 1 for 10 isn't going to get it done. I don't care how much name value you have.
It's fair. It's fair. The rest of the guys, again, Evan Ingram, not going to really want to start him yet, especially coming off an injury in week 1. He might not even play. If he does play, I don't want to start him. Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki. I want to see that tight end room separate. They both played, high percentage of snaps. Noah Fant catching the touchdown this week, a little bit more productive, but I want to see it again before I consider anyone from this tight end room there. Tyler Higbee, definitely a big disappointment. Didn't get a single target, and we had other tight ends in that grouping actually catch the ball. So I'm setting Tyler Higbee for the time being. And Tyler Warren, I'm going back to Tyler Warren. He showed me that he's a big part of that Colts offense, and Daniel Jones needs to look and rely on someone, and it seems like Tyler Warren is that guy right now. So I'm starting Tyler Warren this week here. I don't care about the matchup. I think he'll be just fine seeing 6 to 7 targets pretty easily in this game. So. All right, well, that is going to wrap us up for our week 2 matchups, guys. I appreciate you, those who tuned in and whatnot. If you're listening afterwards, we appreciate you guys as well. Coach Tyler, anything you want to say before we head to hay tonight?
Yeah, guys, go check out dynastynerds.com. We talk about it every show. That's where me and Coach Steve met. Both of us do some work over there. Lots of great stuff as you're getting ready for, week 2 and the rest of the season. I think there's a ton of great articles over there, podcasts, however you consume media. There's great tools for you Dynasty players like the Dynasty GM, which you can also use in your redraft leagues and the Dynasty Film Room. So go check out dynastynerds.com. Use code COACH when you get over there. And thank y'all for checking us out.
Yeah. We did have one question in the chat from Misha, Alex, and Mitchell. What do y'all think about starting Terry tonight? I have DK, Sutton, Terry, and Pearsall.
I think if it's
one
of those, I'm taking the other 3 over Terry.
Yeah, as am I. I think I would sit Terry. I think you could get away sitting Pearsall if you wanted to play Terry tonight. I think Terry will be okay. Not thrilled with his matchup tonight, but he'll be okay. If you want to sit Pearsall because Mac Jones, I get it. But if you're looking for just one of them to start this week, it's just Sutton over all of them. That's how I feel. But you can play Terry tonight. But I think I'm with Coach Ty. I think I prefer Pearsall still, but I understand. I understand if you guys feel different. If you feel differently about that. So, all right. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in and listening. As always, we really do appreciate you. Like I said, we don't get paid to do this. We do this for the bottom of our hearts here. We like talking fantasy. We like helping people win championships, and that's just what we do on the show here, guys. So. Hopefully you guys won your week 1 matchups, and hopefully you start week 2 off really hot. But until then, guys, we thank you all for listening. Tune in until next time, guys. We should be back sometime next week, but I will give you guys some updates. We will do a show at least, one show at least next week, and I'll give you updates then. But I will see you all. We will see you all next week, guys. So take care and have a great one.